Hi everyone, my name is Rachel. I'm one of the participants here, therapist for LGBT. Very happy to be here this morning. Sander, welcome.
Thank you.
And you're here as a true ally, a gay man, if I may say so. The CEO of Randstad, one of the biggest talent agencies in the world, and with a huge track record in Accenture as well. Thank you for being here and letting us pick your brain.
It's great to be here. The social hub is a new phenomenon to me, so I'm sure I'm going to learn from the group as well.
Yes, nice. You live around the corner, so you had a very short commute.
Exactly. Well, I took the subway because the rain is so terrible, and I all feel sorry for you because you all came here to celebrate Pride in the sun and the parade. Well, I hope it's not raining tomorrow, but we'll see.
Yes.
We'll see.
Nice, thank you. I have my phone in hand just because I have the questions written here, not to be rude. So
we're living in a digital world.
Exactly, yes. So, like I said, a true active ally. Your mission is to make Randstad the most equitable provider of access to work. Is that the correct definition?
We want to be the most equitable and specialized talent company. Three important words. First of all, talent. And we live in a world that is talent scarce. If you look around the globe, unemployment is at record low. If you look around the world in the more mature economies, you see that populations are declining or will soon decline. Populations are aging. So that means there's going to be more work to be done by fewer people. So at the end of the day, it's all about talent, making sure we have the people with the right skills in the right place to do the work that needs to be done, whether it's in a distribution center, whether it's in a hospital, in an office. That's what we are about. So talent is at the heart of everything. And what is very interesting there is that, talent has options, and I'm sure you all recognize this, meaning companies and organizations have to almost start treating talent as their customers. Because you have to create an environment where people can learn and grow. You have to create an environment where there's purposeful work. In the context, you have to create an environment where all people feel comfortable at work. And I always say, no one has to leave anything by the door. You can bring your stories to work and by the water cooler or the coffee machine, discuss with your colleagues. You have to provide flexible work because, after COVID, people have found out that flexible work is great and they're not willing to give up. So employers really have to step it up. So talent is at the heart of everything we do. Then the two other words, equitable. Equitable meaning in a world where talent is scarce, we need everybody on board. We need everybody to feel comfortable. We need everybody to have those learning opportunities. And we need to make sure that people during the process get treated in an equitable way. And that is not charity. This is what I say in Randstad. This is not charity. It's not because we want to be good people. We are good people, by the way. But it's not because we want to be good people, but it's a business imperative. Because if talent is scarce, we need everybody on board to take care of our communities. It's as simple as that. So equitable is a very important word. And then specialized. And what do we mean by that? Our clients are looking for people with specialized skills. More and more, lower skilled work is actually decreasing or has been decreasing as part of the total roles in society. So our clients are looking for skills, whether it is a process engineer in a manufacturing environment, whether it's a finance specialist, whether it's a Salesforce specialist. So we need to be specialized as well as Randstad.
And I would like to link in something you said earlier, that it's important that everyone feels safe and comfortable. And being Randstad, you have a lot of stakeholder groups. There's the employees of Randstad, there's the companies that people work for, and the people that find work through you. That's a lot to navigate.
That's about 650,000 people.
Yeah.
Roughly 60,000 people working at our clients, and about 45,000 people working at Randstad.
That's a lot. So how does Randstad navigate that complex landscape to make sure that everyone feels safe? For example, especially trans and non-binary persons.
Yeah, let me say, we're by no means perfect. Let's start there. There's a whole range of things that we do as a company. It all starts with the tone from the top, I always say, because if the leadership in the company strikes the right tone and is not shy to enter into the discussions, sometimes tough discussions with clients, because sometimes you have to say to clients, the practices in your office, your factory, your distribution center, they don't work anymore. And ultimately, sometimes the consequences, it doesn't happen a lot. It could be to say, well, if you want to continue doing that, we're not working for you anymore. That tone and willingness and aspiration is absolutely critical. Then the second very important thing is, and I call it the technicalities, policies, rules, regulations, everything that is written on paper about health and safety, about benefits, about who gets paid what, that all needs to be in order, because, those are the rules of the game in Randstad with our clients. So that we need to make sure that, and for a global company, this is sometimes challenging, that we provide same-sex benefits, let's say in China or in Singapore, and that's not always straightforward, because local regulations sometimes get in the way, or local customs or local culture, so that's sort of the second element of that. Part of that is, by the way, also how you present yourself to the outside world. If you look, and I just sort of, when I started working, and that was like in 1987. Some of you may not even were not even born, maybe. But I got a little brochure of Arthur Andersen, it was called in those days. And you looked into it didn't say much. But these days, if people start working look on your website, to look at your social media, and they're looking for what they see, and they're looking, are there people in that company working, people like me? So if you only see sort of one type of people, and you say, well, probably not for me, next subject.
Exactly.
So presenting yourself to the outside world as part of that is very important.
How was that for you in that time, coming out as a gay man at work?
Well, let's say in those days there was something like, was maybe some gay person on the 6th floor somewhere, Nobody really talked about it. But I decided to bite the bullet early, because I was 2 weeks into work. And then they said, well, next week or in 2 weeks' time, there's the office party. Are you coming? So then I had to think, am I going to bring my partner or not? Because if you bring your partner, everybody immediately knows what's going on. So I decided, okay, let's bite the bullet. Worst thing that can happen is that they don't like the idea, and that I go elsewhere. So that's how I did it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And what were the reactions?
I have a bit of a philosophy there. Let's say coming out at work is not like you have to sit everybody down and say, listen, I have to tell you something. No, you can say at the water cooler, my husband and I went to see a movie, to Barbie, or something like that, and people will figure it out. So, you got to, my style is to be a little, casual about it, because if you may, I think if you make things too serious, people. But anyhow, that's everybody has their own way of doing things, of course.
Nice, yeah. So the reactions were...
The reactions were good, were okay. Yeah, no, I have never had any in my previous company. So and I stayed there for a long time. I've never had any issues. No.
Yeah.
So I ended up in a good place.
But what I heard also from people that work with you at Randstad, that since you've joined, you also have really like brought this idea of like equity to the forefront. Was that something that you were also conscious of when you started? Like, I want to change this organization, or did you negotiate it maybe even when you started? That this was something that's important to you?
But that's Frank. That's back to this is good. Equity is good for society. It's good for people, and it's good for business. So what's the debate?
Okay.
Yeah, you understand what I mean?
Yeah, no, sure.
It's so in that respect.
But do you say with that before you came, this was already?
No, so I think Randstad is a good company, and all the people have their heart in the right place.
Yeah.
And the most important moment in Randstad is we found a job for someone, we made a match, then we ring the bell, because that's what we live for. Every company, I would say, has its own stage of development. Now we're taking Randstad from a pretty decent place to an even better place, I would say. And what is very good, and that's the third element that's very important, is that we are activating or reactivating in some places our networks, our LGBTQ network, our women's network, our black talent network, Latin networks, etc., etc. So those networks, and many of you are probably one way or another involved in those those types of networks, similar ones. They are extremely important.
Yeah.
And that's what we try to stimulate, because people learn from each other and people keep us sharp. People say, okay, you say this, but when I went there, we still have work to do. Okay, well, let's go do it.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, your colleague Rick Vos is also here. Who's, also part of the team that.
He's one of the promoters. Of is it Pride at Randstad? One of the co-chairs. Right.
Yeah. And also you work a lot with, you are very active in recruitment. Do you see that people also respond when you are trying to attract talent to Randstad, that this is something that they engage with you during interviews?
No, I think that's also what Sander said. People are looking for recognition. Do I see elements that are important for me? Do I see those back in the company? And we have now 6 global BRGs, and under it there are a lot of local BRGs or ERGs, and they become very active. So, and we can go to a better place. And sometimes we have in statements we are maybe a little bit of world peace, and we can be a little bit more bold. And that are the discussions that I think that are on the table also with our leadership team is taking place. And what we now see is that we really see from the top the sponsoring coming back. So every BRG has a executive sponsor. And we started almost, just in the field, and that are very nice movements. Right. But people are looking at those kind of things and ask for it. Yeah, for sure.
Great.
Yeah, and we're here in a room with a lot of diverse talent. And this masterclass is all about partnerships and collaboration. So what does a company like Randstad need in order for us to find ways to collaborate with you? How would we go about that? Because it's usually small companies, but we have a lot of ideas. We come from the community. How can we best approach that?
Yeah, good question. That obviously depends on what kind of company, what kind of organization. If you work for an NGO and you want to work with companies, you sort of look for companies who are sort of aligned with your thinking or with your objectives, or maybe even in the business. I always say water flows to the lowest point. So go there where the chances of being successful, where the doors are open. Go there first. because where the doors are closed, you first have to open them, and that's a lot more work.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I would be a bit opportunistic or entrepreneurial, if you will, because
Yeah.
that's how things work. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So, and then for Randstad, for example, what is right now the biggest challenge that you face on DIY inclusion, or maybe queer inclusion in specific?
But I would say in general, the biggest challenge for big companies is to make sure that everything is right in all places. Yeah, and that's hard if you are in 40 countries, if you have 40,000 people.
Yeah.
And that's hard, in terms of how you do business. Do we all have the same app, for instance?
Yeah.
But it's also hard in terms of how we go about how we do our work, how we work with our clients, how we work with our talents. Now, we have strong values, and something that's quite unique about Randstad is our founder. He became 90 years old yesterday. He was very strong on the values of Randstad, and he said to know, to serve, to trust. And so to know your clients and talents, to serve your clients and talents, and to build trust. And that is something that's sort of the Randstad DNA, and that's what you see throughout. So those types of elements are very important. But does not necessarily mean that everything is always perfect. So getting things perfect, making sure you have the right mechanisms to deal with challenges, and make sure you have the right people on board.
Because that was actually one of the questions of Boris Dietrich yesterday that he wanted to ask you. Because he said, and this also, I think you already touched upon it when you described, like, then not every country has the same laws, not everything has the same understanding of equity at this moment. So how do you, in all those different countries, also protect not only the interest of your employees, but also try to use your company platform to influence political debates around.
That's a good. That's. I'm not surprised that Boris is asking that question.
I'm just a messenger, Sander.
And his friend Graham is here to listen to the answer. He's already texting Boris. So a couple of thoughts there. Within Randstad, the Randstad values count. Yeah. So within the Randstad office, we behave like we behave everywhere, and that's how it should be. So there is no, we cannot say we're in China, so we don't care about equity, and not as an example. But that's a very important starting point. Then, by doing business in countries in the right way, and by being out there in certain ways, participate in Pride, etc., etc. I mean, you implicitly put some pressure on the environment, so that helps. Do we see as our mission to influence governments? Yes, maybe on the broader context. So if we get asked, but we're not. I mean, we're not a Human Rights Watch, so to speak. So we have a different mission in life, and we try to do that in the right way. But it's not our role to go to governments and say, well, you need to change your country here. That's not what we do. We try to be a role model, and I will tell you. Let's say there are lots of countries that we are not. So we're not in the Middle East, we're not in Africa. So some of the biggest challenges where Boris and Graham are focusing on, in those countries, we are not there. So we're happy to support Human Rights Watch doing that.
Great. Any questions in the room?
So first of all, thank you for being here this very early morning with us. You said talent is scarce. I don't know if I agree, actually. What I know is that social injustice is widespread, and that there is education poverty in Europe. So many youngsters are excluded from even going to elementary school these days because of poverty. So where do we create talent where there is so much injustice and so many youngsters are excluded even from basic education? This is my question to you. And the second one is about what you talked about at in the last part. There is a new term that we use. It's pink washing or rainbow washing. It's not your case because I've looked at Randstad and you do very well in Italy, for instance, for respecting collective agreements. You're signatory to collective agreements. But there's many companies which participate in Pride. They, dress themselves rainbow or pink or whatever, and then they do not respect collective agreements. They give very bad salaries, very precarious working conditions, etc. What's your opinion on that? Do you think that the two things should go together, or can we live with rainbow dressing? Thank you.
Yeah, your first question, I didn't quite get what the question was, to be honest. But I mean, obviously, it's critical that in whatever country we are in Europe, or that kids go to school and learn something and ultimately find a job, because that's sort of you have your family and your work, and those are sort of the two things that go hand in hand. Those are the two cornerstones of life. No, you're absolutely right. So one of the things that we at Randstad increasingly do, if that there is no talent, we have to create quote-unquote talent, i.e. we have to train people to be ready for work in one way or another. So yes, that's what we do in certain cases. On the subject of pink washing, I think that let's say some companies are quote-unquote accused of pink washing by people who do not really know what's going on in the company. Because if Shell as a company, or ABN AMRO, or Fiat has a float in Pride, is that pink washing? No, because we don't know what's happening at Shell. I know what's happening at Shell because I've had some exposure to them. So I think there's sort of almost a black and white. There is a lot of pink washing. How do we know? Have we asked Shell what they are doing and how, etc., etc. So. I would be in favor of more of a dialogue between groups on both sides, and say, okay, what are you actually doing? How can you do better? Let's talk about it, rather than say, okay, well, they have a float in the Pride. It's all pink washing. It's bullshit. Yeah. And by the way, we don't like Shell because they do oil, and that's also bad. Yeah. So. I think it's much more nuanced than that. Doesn't help for the debate maybe, but.
No. I think it's very interesting. I mean, it's also a question of. I think there's another one. Yeah. We had this theme yesterday as well. Sometimes we don't know each other, and it's important to listen first and to understand. And I think what you explained is also internal development of companies. Sometimes. Participation can be a first step. So it's good to inquire first. Thomas, yeah.
I wanted just to follow on from actually the pink washing discussion. I can give you a couple of examples. Heineken refusing, for instance, to sponsor Belgrade Pride because it would detriment their market, and also Ted Baker putting flags in their windows during the time that the CEO is accused of sexual assault against women. But I wanted to come back to...
So that's an interesting example. I don't know the example of Ted Baker, but let's say Ted Baker could be a good company with doing all the right things for inclusion. I don't know, but let's take this as a case study. Then let's say Randstad is a great company and we do all the good stuff I just told you. Now tomorrow I'm in the jail for whatever reason. That doesn't make everything that Randstad does pinkwashing. You understand what I mean? So you got to be careful what you say.
Well, no, I do disagree because we have very high rates of sexual assault, and I actually am director of the stichting in the Netherlands that works with male, gay, bisexual victims of sexual assault, and that was actually what I wanted to lead to, because we talk about partnerships. Often we find that in the context of pinkwashing, that corporations are very reluctant to sponsor difficult topics that don't get visibility within our community but actually have extreme need. So it's very common, for instance, for businesses to give money to Workplace Pride, to the business club, and then do not much else with the community. And granted, within the company, of course, there is obligation and can be initiatives, but what the community, I think, needs, and this is what Pride is for marginalized voices to be amplified and for marginalized communities to be worked with, so that they can be less marginalized, such as victims of sexual assault. As I said, 25% of gay and bisexual men experience sexual assault every year in the Netherlands, and yet when we approach partners, it's impossible for them. For instance, one partner already said, yes, we've already given to Workplace Pride. Now, my question is, how can we approach corporations or businesses with difficult topics that might not reflect well on the community in a specific sense, but where there is real need?
No, I mean that's a good question, and B, a difficult one, because I recognize the dynamics. Okay, we are a company, so there's Workplace Pride. We are about LGBTQ in the workplace. So, okay, that's an organization that resonates. We can learn from each other. So that's sort of a natural thing to do as a business. The more difficult topics, and thank you very much for doing what you're doing, because it's important. They are, let's say, somewhat at a distance, even if it happens in the workplace sometimes, by the way. And then it becomes more challenging. Then it becomes more, you're more in the corporate social responsibility, and there you're then competing with the likes of UNICEF. And we've done quite a bit of work for refugees in Eastern Europe. You may be competing with the Cancer Foundation. You understand what I mean? It's a crowded place out there. And then I guess the question is, and this is back to the discussion we just had, is where are the doors open? And I imagine that for you, there are more closed doors than for UNICEF. You understand what I mean? It's sort of. So I don't have a let's say like a silver bullet for you.
Thank you for being here. I was triggered by you saying that you have a casual way of saying things about being gay, for example. I was wondering, how queer can you be at the top of your organization or in general? Because I realize also you're white, I'm also white, we're still male. So I'm wondering, like, how far do trans folks, black queer folks get in the top of organizations? Because I don't see them yet.
No, well, and that's a work in progress. And whether it's women, gay people, people of color, you have to work very hard to make a tiny little bit of progress. I'll just give you one example. In Accenture, if we wanted to, let's say we had a number of senior executives, which is like the top 5,000 of the company. It took us 10 years to get from 20% to 30%. And then you say, from 20 to 30%, how is it possible? But then when you start looking at the numbers, out of the 5,000, let's say 500 leave every year. So you have to appoint 500 new ones. And if you want to grow, you have to appoint 800 new ones. Now, if you want to go 1% up on the total, you have to find 58 women to promote on top of the normal contingent of women that you already promote. So if you start doing the numbers, it is very hard to do. So it's a frustrating. Frustrating.
An extra push, for example.
No, absolutely. Yeah. So we said we need to promote every year 30% of women, rather than normal. If you would do the rather than 20 or 25%, what the current state was. So you need to promote more. So we give them an extra push. So we were asking, okay, are the women 3-4 years ahead of the promotion? Are they in the right place? Do they have the right client? Do they have the right sponsorship? And all of that. So that's what I mean. It's hard work, and you cannot wait until the promotion date is there, because then you'll probably conclude, oh yeah, sorry, there are no women, we cannot promote them. Yeah, so you need to start way. Also, and we have a similar challenge, by the way, in Randstad. We are fortunate that about 2/3 of our people are women. But also in senior leadership, we are at 42 or 43%, which is a lot less than 67. So we have set a target now to get to 50%. But again, that will take probably 5, 6, 7 years.
Okay, thank you very much. Unfortunately, it's
No,
time already. Is there anything you would like to, in the context of partnerships and collaboration, anything that you said, this is what I've learned, I would love to share that with this group?
Well, I think, let's say what I would, but I mean, it feels like this is a group that is already following that advice, because I mean, you're all here for a reason. You do something special, in your part of the world, or in your industry, or in your NGO, and that's why you're here. But I would say be out there. Let's say I was always out, but it took me a while to get out there, so to speak. Now you all are out there already, but I can only encourage you to to be out there and fight for what you stand for, because the world needs it.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.